What I'm telling you is that they doctored evidence. And I believe you're checking and changing a year of a date here. They switched the date of a Twitter a year to try to connect it to this case. That's not a small thing, ma'am.
That's Trump attorney Michael Van Der Veen calling out the media for ignoring the news that Democrat impeachment managers doctored evidence. Jordan Sekulow is the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice. He's also a member of President Trump's personal legal team and a Newsmax contributor. Jordan, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. So much I want to talk to you about, but I got to get your reaction there to that statement that the Democrats doctored this evidence. How big of a deal is that?
In the real world, that would be a huge deal. You'd face sanctions as an attorney. The case would have been thrown out. All of their evidence would have been thrown out, because if you have one piece of evidence that is altered like that, and they had a number of pieces which never would have made it into evidence because of the splicing and dicing, the way they didn't include the president's full remarks, but taking a private citizen's tweet, adding and then not just screenshotting it, but changing the date, so messing with that, adding the verification check mark, and then taking the words in the tweet out of context, not explaining what Calvary means, which is a religious, a Christian term about like bringing basically Christ back to Washington, D.C., and instead making about the military term of cavalry. This is, again, it was just one example of how that splicing and dicing and playing it loose ultimately kills your case. It's why I think that final day of impeachment, Sean, they switched from incitement to dereliction of duty. They just totally gave up the incitement because that had all fallen apart. So now it was, well, the president wasn't doing enough after the horrible events of January 6th began. Was it necessary to change that date? I mean, how necessary was it? No. I mean, that's the thing with the House managers. I've been through this for the first impeachment. They never will give you the full truth. They're always playing with the evidence, and ultimately it kills their case. It hurts their case with the American people. I mean, unfortunately, the media and the mainstream world tries to downplay this as no big deal. But I think that for normal folks, they understand they took a private citizen's tweet and misused it for their purposes when they didn't really need to do that. They were just trying to overdo it with evidence. It is common with them. That's why you have to watch everything they say and do. Remember those last moments of the impeachment? It was Pat Leahy jumping in and cutting them off and saying, you can't introduce new evidence in your closing remarks. Knock this off. So I think it also goes to Sean why that this whole idea of we're going to bring in witnesses, and then they realized Nancy Pelosi would have to be a witness, and that was that. You realize the power of the real Democrat Party when they tried to play funny with that. You saw 7 Republicans, though, jump ship, despite even knowing that was doctored evidence, which is facing a lot of criticism about that. And I want to play this, too, on that same topic matter. Senator McConnell voted against impeachment, but in his remarks on Saturday, he had this to say about further legal action against the former president.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he's in office.
Okay, so the second impeachment is behind us. Acquittal happened, and no one doubted that would happen. We are exactly where we thought we would be in our country, with our government, with our former president. My question for you is the former president, now concerned about a further legal action? It doesn't look like this is going to be let up. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He's under constant lawfare. So we got Georgia that we're dealing with right now trying to expand that investigation, New York trying to expand their investigations. The Democrat Party, when you've got elected DAs, elected attorney generals that are Democrats, they're going after former President Trump, no doubt. But what Mitch McConnell said was really nothing at all. It's actually what we argued. One of the reasons we argued that this impeachment was wrong was that the idea that there was a January exception, that a president can do whatever they want because you won't have time to impeach them, is absurd because, yes, they are subject to the law. They are now private citizens. It is easier to move forward with legal challenges and investigations against them. So if you believe that the president met those standards under the Brandenburg case of incitement, which he didn't, and that's why the House managers didn't even want to go there, you could see a prosecution there. I haven't gotten any word yet from, and neither is our team, that's being seriously looked into.
by anyone in D.C., which would where this would be out of. But certainly, I mean, Mitch McConnell's right to one sense. If you're a Trump supporter, I want you to know the president was acquitted here, and that was big national news and very public. But he is facing a tremendous amount of legal onslaught.
We'll watch for that. Really quickly before you go, I just want to get your comment on this. Michael van der Veen got a lot of praise on social media for his handling of the trial. What did you make of it?
I think ultimately what the defense team was able to do is, and we did this the first impeachment, which was, I know it was a lot different. It was, the president was in office and there was a lot of these high profile attorneys that were part of our team. You had Adam Schiff on the other side. Is they just listened and they took into what the Democrats said, and they realized they're doctoring evidence, they're splicing and dicing, we can play it entirety, and now they're going after private citizens and misusing their evidence. They're not meeting any standards. The trampling on the First Amendment, that idea, that doesn't sell well with Americans. The First Amendment has no application here whatsoever. I mean, all of that, I think ultimately here, those 7 Republicans, a couple of those are surprises, but 5 of those are no surprise at all. The president gets acquitted. And they won. I mean, they won their case. The president won. And again, he's vindicated because the idea is you bring this to try and actually get to the 2/3. And for the second time, they've drugged the country through this horrendous trial like this and divided the country. And the president comes out acquitted. Nothing changes in Washington. And we're supposed to unite? Give me a break. I don't want to unite with Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or anybody on the left.
I'll leave it right there. Jordan, always good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. Jordan Sekulow joining us live.
Thanks, Sean.